Hi everybody, welcome back to my channel. My name is Susie and my channel is Light Fragments Oracle. And today we're going to go over a couple of quick things and then get into part 3 of my story. So I hope you stick around. Before I get into my story, a couple of people have asked me what the eyeshadow palette is that I've been using. And it is a palette that I got from TEMU because I wanted to try it because it reminded me so much of a dupe for Natasha Denona. And I'm sure this is an indie brand, but this is the palette. It's a really neutral palette. And the name of the company is called Ting Fei, registered and trademarked, Glam Palette. Came in a box like this, similar to the actual container or component. I really like this palette. It's soft. It's not, the pigment is there, but it's soft. It's not really strong pigment. So you can build it up nicely. Use this palette again today. And I'm also going to use the Tarte Shape Tape Contour Concealer in light medium honey. Tarte is made in Korea. I'm going to also use the Too Faced in Golden Hour blush. And my Nobulash mascara. And I need to tell you, I contacted the company. I love this mascara so much. I asked them if they could send me the eyebrow serum and the eyelash serum, and they agreed to do that. So they are sending it out next week, and I'm going to review it on my channel. Okay, so let's get started. I'm going to put on some makeup. Now, this came in, I ordered this off of Amazon because I had Amazon credits. And this is called the Revlon Luminance Skin Caring Foundation, 5% squalane and hyaluronic acid. And this is the color 317 Sand. Remember I told you I do well, even when I go in and I check the different colors on the models and things. This is a popular color for me. So I'm going to be testing this today. This will be first experience. Haven't used it before. It's brand new. And that's what I'm going to be putting on now. So let's get going on my story a little bit. Well, I'm going to back up to when I saw the spirit in my room because, I only have so much time to get up a video. I could make it an hour long, but people don't want to watch hour-long videos. So for time constraint, I may flip back and forth. But remember when I told you that my dad had mentioned about the spirit in my room? That he felt that spirit was meant for him. Well, I was about 13 and he passed away when I was 19. So he didn't mean it in a negative sense that, that he was some sort of evil person. He already knew that this spirit was like the Grim Reaper. You know how the Grim Reaper is supposed to come and let people know that their time is up. Okay, first application up on my forehead. Look at this. I'm using a brush that I'm going to pat it out. So that's just an interesting thing to mention about the spirit that I saw in my room. So yeah, my dad passed away when I was 19. We'll get into that whole situation. The other thing that I wanted to mention about when I was in high school, and I did my self-portrait. If you go to my channel, there is a preview video that's about 15 minutes long, and it really gives you a very brief expose of, you know, how I came to be where I am today. And I talk about my self-portrait. Remember, I had mentioned to you that my self-portrait was like really avant-garde and modern compared to the kids in my class. And, you know, a lot of people would come in, my friends, things like that, and they would just sit and chat with me. And they would even comment that, you know, wow, Susie, I mean, you know, that doesn't look like you at all. Only parts of it did. So I will try to put a picture of that right here in the video so you can see what my self-portrait was over 40 years ago. And you will see that there are all kinds of colors around me. And so my instructor came up to me and said, what are all these colors? I mean, he liked that it was different. I had a great art teacher. But he's like, what about all these colors? What do they represent? And I said, I don't know. I just see them. That's what I see when I look at myself. And that was it. I didn't even know what an aura was. I mean, I knew what the word aura meant, but I didn't know anything about seeing auras. And my guess is that I was so used to the way that I saw that I didn't even think about it. And you know, when you're a teenager, you go a lot by your feelings first. Tapping into your own psychic abilities has to do, well, I like to call it the Trinity. It has to do with your crown, your third eye, and your heart. 3. And when those 3 things are merged together with the higher realms, you will begin to experience, much like me. But I believe that I was born this way. I believe this is not something I inherited from practice or taking class. I was born this way. This is really nice, you guys. Nice foundation so far. I like it. It has that barely there feel on the face. I would put on a second coat, but for today, I'm just going to take my sponge and I'm going to dab it on the areas that I want to cover. I think I'm even going to use it over my eyes because I don't feel like putting a base on over my eyes today. I have to leave, same as song and dance, I have to leave to go to work. Work is really picking up, so whenever I can get in a half an hour video, I get it in and then I edit it at night when my husband falls asleep on the couch. So technically, I'm always working unless I force myself to chill. And I did that last night. I actually watched all 4 parts of the Twilight series. I just needed to break away from anything that had to do with technology or working my day job. I always try to make sure that I press in this area of my nose. I think this looks really nice on the skin. All right, moving on. So my dad, he loved that portrait. He had it framed. So shortly after I graduated from high school, my father had a stroke. I had been accepted into Notre Dame, and my father he lost the capacity of his right arm and his right leg. So when he said, I think that spirit was meant for me, I believe he was correct. And the getting out of the window had nothing to do with being in the wrong room. It had to do with the timing. And remember, I had told you that I would say my prayers at night before I went to bed. Well, actually, I just repeated them over and over again so that I could fall asleep, because of the things that I saw, and I knew that I saw. I still see them. They still come to me. Not like they used to, though, during that time, because I learned discernment. And only a spirit will come through that is in need. And when I don't know who it is, I just simply pray for them. I mean, it could be somebody on the other side of the world, for all I know. And I have had experiences where I believe that I might have seen a face years ago, and then I meet that person, but I can't prove it. So we're going to just leave it at that. So here I am in college, my freshman year. I was driven. I was driven. I was bound and determined to complete college. There was nothing that was going to stop me. Nothing. And I do feel that conviction that was so strong had an emphasis on what came to pass down the road. But my father, for the 8 months after his stroke, he ended up back in the hospital. So now I'm in a sophomore, and I had this urgency. The school had a van, and I jumped into the van and said I was going to go to the library, and drove all the way to see my father at the hospital. And my girlfriend came with me, my roommate, one of my roommates. And I remember going in to see him. He was lucid. It wasn't, he didn't end up in the hospital from another stroke. He had heart issues too, and his heart was acting up, and that's why he ended up back in the hospital. And boy, am I glad that I did that. The others had access, easier access than I did, because my father passed away 3 weeks later. And things began to shift in my life a little bit. My mother went through her grieving process the way that she knew how. My younger sister was very close to my dad, so she ended up going through a depression. She was only 16. Here I am at college, and I decided, there really wasn't anything I could do. It was a sad situation, but I really needed to focus on school. So I ended up gaining my friends. I made another really, really close friend from the Philippines. And her name was Barbara. Barbara Lee. I don't know if your last name is Lee anymore. If you watch my video, please contact me. I would love to see you. I miss you. I think about you all the time. So Barbara and I got really, really close. And she wanted me to go visit her sisters who lived in a high-rise apartment in Boston. So we planned a weekend together. My mother allowed me to take the car. And we went to Boston. The first day that we were in Boston, I really didn't eat. I wasn't eating well. I wasn't sleeping well. I wasn't taking care of myself. But I had a lot of sugar. And that night, her two sisters were making a meal for us from where they came from. And they were studying to be in the medical field. And Barbara's dad was a doctor in the Philippines. And Barbara was an artist and a dancer. So we're getting ready to sit down to eat, where I'm sitting at on a stool at the countertop. And all of a sudden, my head started slamming the back of my neck. Uncontrollably. I couldn't control it. It was beyond my control. And that's all I remember. I remember waking up in the ambulance and I ended up at Beth Israel Hospital. And I was there for 7 days. And they did all kinds of tests on me. I have no memory of it whatsoever. The only thing I remember is Barbara came to visit me to tell me she was going to Chinatown. Was there anything that I wanted? And I remember them giving me the spinal tap and telling me that I couldn't move for like 10 hours. That's how they did it back then. So they gave me drugs to quiet me down. I honestly don't know who contacted my mother. I don't know any of it. The consensus was, through all of these tests that they did, that there was seizure-prone activity in my brain, and that it wasn't epilepsy. It was what they called seizure-prone activity. They doped me up on anticonvulsant medication and sent me out the door. So now, as soon as I stood up straight after being in bed for 7 days, I don't even remember going to the bathroom. I mean, it's just an uncanny situation. I have no memory. No memory. But as soon as I stood up, I saw flashing lights around and around and around. If I laid down, I was fine. If I stood up, I saw flashing lights. If I closed my eyes before I fell asleep, I saw flashing lights. So I only wanted to be laying down and I only wanted to be sleeping, because that was the only way that I could not see flashing lights. And I don't know how I drove my mother's car when the bus took us back to Barbara's grandparents, and then I drove my mother's car back to school. I have no recollection of how I did it. None. All I know is that I got back to school and I crawled into bed. I kept trying to contact my mother to tell her something was wrong with me. Now, don't forget, my dad had passed away. So she was in her own mind grieving about my father. And my siblings had their own lives. My younger sister was battling depression. So finally, my older sister said to my mother, "You have got to get her to the doctors. This is not normal. The girl can't walk. There's something desperately wrong." And this went on for 3 weeks. So my mother called our family physician, who got in touch with a neurologist an hour away from where we lived, and made an appointment. And they brought me. My sister and my mother brought me to see this doctor, this neurologist. I had to have sleep deprived, is it EEGs? I had to have EEGs for flashing lights. I had to have all kinds of tests. And the consensus was, yeah, there was electricity in my brain. Call it seizure prone if you want, but there was electricity in there that they couldn't explain. So then the doctor told my mother, she's on way too much medication. They overdosed her in the hospital. So he cut me down to 2 pills a day, and also the dosage. So 1 in the morning, 1 at night, lower dose. So I wouldn't have another seizure. And sent me home. And then I had follow-up appointments. I did go back to school. I don't have any idea how I made it through school. Seriously. I don't have any idea. But at the end of that school year, my GPA was a 3.6 out of a possible 4. Do not ask me how I did it, because I can't tell you. All I know is that I did it, and I would go walking when I was home, and all through that summer with my aunt, who was retired, and as the medication stabilized, I went back to normal, but it wasn't my normal. Everything was different. Everything was different after that. These anticonvulsant medicines are basically downers. So I had periods of depression, and I would not get help for it because I believed that I was strong enough to get myself through it. Drove my family crazy, I'm sure. But I just kept plugging along. And the flashing lights went away. And I finished out that year. But I want to bring you back to the very first video when I told you that I was 6 years old, 5 or 6 years old, driving with my mother and my sister to bring my sister back to school, and I saw a craft. They didn't see it. I saw it. And my dad drew it for me as I explained it to him. Now, I do not know if I had an experience during those 7 days. But I know all I remember is being in that bed, being in a very dark room. There was nobody next to me in the other bed. like that room never got light. It was always dark. I don't know where I went, but I know that I wasn't inside of me. And it might have been the drugs. Believe me, it's 40 years of thinking about this, trying to figure it out. I think I figured it out. And the flashing lights, they were like strobe lights, but they were round circles. And they were like coming in like this. And they were rotating around my head. So they'd come in and rotate, come in and rotate. And this went on, this flashing lights, for 3 weeks, morning, noon, and night. Anyway, I'm going to put on my mascara and my lipstick, and I'm going to come right back, and we're going to wrap this video up. Okay. So, I went walking with my aunt, but before that, my mother and my sister took me to a healing service within our church. And I don't remember this. I do remember going, but my sister told me that my mother and her had to carry me down the aisle to have hands laid on me because I couldn't walk. So, came out of that 3.6 GPA through all of it that year. And from there, my story gets more interesting. So, if you want to see part 4, go back and watch part 1, part 2, and today's, so you can get an idea, and that'll get you up to date for part 4. But I just wanted to say, I'm glad that you're here. Let me back up so you guys can see what I'm wearing. This is going to come off because I'm going to work. So, thank you so much for being here with me while I tell my story. I've never told it before. Bits and pieces. And I believe that something happened in those 7 days. And I was meant to see what I saw when I was 6 years old, in the spirits and all of that. And there's nothing evil about it. I was protected. So, be well, be blessed, be beautiful because you are, because there is nobody else on the planet like you. And stick around. I think I'm going to take a break from my story and do a little bit of some other makeup fun things. I've got a TEMU order that's coming in that I purchased. So, that's the end of the video. I hope to see you this weekend. I don't think I'm going to have another chance to put up another video between now and Sunday. Maybe I can do it on Saturday. But Monday, I'm going live, a 1-card pick a card pull. And you know what? I might not even pull cards. I might just use my psychic abilities, because if I'm going by my psychic abilities, how can it be called evil? Because I'm not using cards. How do you like that? Okay, friends, I gotta go. Take care. Until next time. You know I love you. You know it, right? You know it.